Again. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Hold on a
Can we
minute.
go to the
Okay.
next slide?
Yeah.
Excellent. So the second philosopher is Alfred North Whitehead, who was writing in the early 20th century, and he shares a certain sensibility with Simondon, though Whitehead offers a more explicit approach to experience, as can be seen in this wonderful quote. Apart from the experience of subjects, there is nothing, 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 bare nothingness. And I love this idea, and it is really grounds kind of the work that I do. Whitehead extends the notion of experience to all things, all actual things in the world, experience, and they do so in very specific ways. So living things, non-living things, it's really foundational to his philosophy, and I build upon this idea in my work, which we'll see in just a minute. So Whitehead's whole philosophy is built on the nature of experience and how experience works. And he uses this concept of prehension to argue for a non-cognitive experience. The chairs that you're sitting on right now prehend you. They absorb your weight. They move with you as you fidget, wondering what in the world this guy is talking about. That's the chair's experience, and it's contingent on you. It's the coming together of you and the chair. Whitehead claims that subjects and objects interact with one another by way of their prehensions. And prehensions are specific to each entity, what he calls the subjective form. So he suggests that it's not so much that experience is formed by subjects or objects in and of themselves, but that they become superjects, the commingling experiences of subjects and objects together. Experience is this active intermingling. The next slide, please. So to sum up, Simondon's work is about individuation, but he also writes about invention and use. Individuals come to be by way of their constituting relations. Individuals and milieu emerge together, informing one another, and technical objects actually create new environments, new milieu, and they think and feel alongside of their inventors. Next slide, please. So Whitehead, prehension is a form of non-conscious feeling, and those things in the world, those prehensions are those things in the world that an entity can feel. Entities involve one another by way of their prehensions. Together they form superjects. So you can see the superject is analogous to Simondon's individual milieu relationship, the dyad as he calls it. Together these philosophers inform my underlying question that started us off: how can art create shared experiences between humans and non-humans? And so it can be argued that I'm trying to make superjects between the art viewer and the non-human organism and the technology binding them together. So with that, we should look at some of my work. So if you could go to the next slide, please. BioLess is a series of interactive sculptures using Pyroscistus fusiformis. It's a dinoflagellite or single-celled algae that emits bright blue light when it's physically stimulated or agitated. This is my very first prototype. It's made on my kitchen table. It's a toy motor with plastic stir stick and a small jar of seawater and dinoflagellates, and a galvanic skin response sensor as the input mechanism, which measures the conductivity on your skin or micro sweat on your fingers. Now this was actually supposed to be a proof of concept for another project that would have required lab space and genetically modified bacteria that I was never able to convince a lab to give to me. So I still haven't convinced anyone to let me squat in their
Come,
lab to do that.
come on, you have a PhD now. You could just put doctor at the end of your
know.
name.
It has yet to work, but I'm still trying. But what happened with this is that I did this great little experiment on my table and it worked. I got this bright blue eruption of light, and I went to go do it again and it was like 1/3 lighter. And then I did it again and it just didn't even light up at all. And I immediately exhausted the algae, which I didn't even know was possible. So I encountered all kinds of design challenges that I knew there was something there, so I just kept at it. So if we look at the next slide, here are a few examples of experiments I was doing, and the challenges of algae just didn't seem to stop for a while. There was exhaustion. There's a very specific temperature range. If they get too hot, they will die. It required me to pack them in ice and keep a fan running for the summer. They have a very specific light cycle that they need. They're easily contaminated. So all of this, I had to teach myself how bioluminescence works. I had to learn how to propagate the algae. Essentially, I had to learn to care for it. And I think this is really essential when we're working with living organisms. We have to care. We have to empathize with them. And so, but I kept making prototypes, and we can look at the first one shown here in the next slide. It was shown at the UCLA Art Sci Gallery. It's again using the galvanic skin response sensor and this little packet of algae, and it worked pretty well. I got good feedback, but it was my first experience in not giving the algae enough light. It was pretty dim. The gallery space was quite dark. And I had this constant negotiation of showing these things, and I often try to show works in progress, sort of a prototyping approach, get it out there in the hands of people and see how they experience it, how it works, and we can go to the next slide, which is just some process stuff of soldering, which is, I agree with Simone, is a very aesthetic experience. I tried probably 5 or 6 different versions of this that all ultimately failed spectacularly, which I think is really important as an artist and technologist. We need to be comfortable with things not working the way we want them to and keep pushing. And if you go to the next slide, this is how the work culminated at the end. 3 stations of 750 ml jars with motors embedded in the seawater connected to a heartbeat sensor. It's shown in pitch black, and you just put your finger on the heartbeat sensor, and the motors move in time with your pulse, giving you this organic display, which you can see in the next slide. Yeah. Now, one of the great things about this project, compared to the other one, is that this moving to that different biosensor of heartbeat sensor. Most people don't understand what galvanic skin response is. It's really hard to explain in just a couple of minutes, but everyone understands their heartbeat almost intuitively. I also have a video art background, and I'm used to making a 20-minute experimental video and having someone watch about 30 seconds of it and then walking away going, yeah, I got it. And what was great about this is that people stay there for several minutes, really getting into the experience. One woman had her face like right up next to the glass. She referred to the algae as her algae. It was very successful in that way. And it created this nice, intimate experience. So that's BioLess, and that really kind of gave me this desire to continue working with living non-human organisms. And so if we go to the next slide, this is a project that's still very much in process. It's called Fermento. I embed sensors in fermenting kimchi and sauerkraut and then sonify the fermentation process. Fermentation is naturally occurring, and though humans have been manipulating the fermentation process for at least 6,000 years. So this makes it one of our earliest forms of biotechnology. It's also this rich site of human-bacterial relations. Kimchi, sauerkraut, and other fermented foods are rich in microbial organisms and thought to foster healthy gut microflora. And though this is not my central focus of this project, I think the human-bacterial relations provide a rich backdrop for this work. So we look at the next slide. This is the working prototype of it. You can see their sensors there. So I'm inspired by the symbiotic relations between host and symbiont. And actually, if you want to play that video from Elizabeth, this would be a good time.
Sorry, I was just enjoying your talk so much. I was not paying attention at all. Oh, very funny.
So this will just provide a nice backdrop, hopefully. So Fermentum attempts to reveal the bacterial way of being in the world. It's really in response to Simoneau's ideas of individuation. It explores the dynamic changes of bacterial communities in fermentation. The project primarily deals with the emergence of lactic acid bacteria communities responsible for the fermentation process of a number of foods. And I focus on kimchi and sauerkraut because they ferment in similar ways. And the fermentation with lactic acid bacteria involves different stages of activity. So while the ingredients are different, the processes are quite similar. The early stages of fermentation are described as heterofermentative, where bacteria produce a number of byproducts, including acids, CO2, and alcohol. Lactobacillus mesenteroides produces both CO2 and acid, initiating the fermentation stage in sauerkraut and kimchi. CO2 helps maintain the anaerobic environment, which allows lactic acid bacteria. Oh, it stopped.
Oh, that's it. Okay, great.
It allows the lactic acid bacteria to dominate the fermenting batch, and is vital in preventing spoilage. As the heterofermentive bacteria change the acidity of the environment, the bacterial population shifts to this dominant homofermentative lactic acid bacteria. The process and specific microbes vary based on a number of factors, including the type of vegetables and spices used in the preparation. But sensors, predominantly pH, CO2, and temperature, are used to track the environmental changes within the vessel. And these changes are indicative of bacterial activity and help us understand these shifts in the environment. And then the data from the sensors is sent to software, Max MSP, that sonifies the data. And the resulting sounds offer a real-time emergent representation of microbial activity. So the project is really trying to make bacterial experience sensible to a human audience. If we go to that next video, which I apologize is pretty rough, but it does give you a sense of the early prototype sound. I'll just let that play. And is there sound with that?
Yeah. We've got the sound. It's
okay.
kind of great.
Okay, so those changes in tone you hear are shifting pH, shifting CO2 values. I just popped the lid off of this this kimchi when I made it, and so the oxygen was mixing in, and as that rapidly changes, you get those pitches in there. So this is very 8-bit video game sounding right now, and the goal is to make it something that's a little bit more organic feeling, and it'll be shown in June in Victoria in an art show curated by Jennifer Willett, a Canadian bio artist as well. What I think would be good now is to kind of turn it over to you and maybe answer some questions. I want to make sure we have lots of time for discussion.
Awesome. Wonderful. Great. Great. Okie dokie. Wow, I have to tell you, I really loved the video of the bubbles, the really slow bubbles. And I kind of just wanted to, I kept thinking like maybe it would be great to videotape that in real time. Like you could just put a webcam on it, you know?
That's great. That's actually sped up.
Oh, it is? Oh, that's even better.
5 or 10 times. Yeah, that's because it's so slow. I agree. That's the one problem is that it doesn't seem like much is happening. So I got to figure out a way to make sure people know that it's live. But I could see just kind of a kimchi cam the whole time.
Yeah. I'm going to turn this. So does everybody have a question? You guys all have questions? You're supposed to have one question, everybody. Right before I do that, though, just as a thought, I mean, I just love this. I really love art that you can't really watch happen, that you actually have to leave the room and come back for, right?
Yeah.
So, so I mean, it'd be really nice if there was some kind of situation where it could really slowly change color. I don't know. I just love how slow it is. When I first started playing it, I thought something was wrong. Because of course I wasn't doing anything, and I thought, oh shit, oh pardon my language, sorry guys. I thought, oh no, the video isn't working. This is, I don't, what shall I do? And then I noticed that a bubble kind of moved, which was just lovely. Really wonderful.
Good. I'm glad that worked. It gives a nice atmosphere, I think, to the project.
So fabulous.
And,
okay.
I think the whole project helps us think about time in a different way.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, I had one other really fast thought about that project. It might be interesting. I mean, I feel like you're kind of to some degree sonifying the really like very basis of kind of the life force. The mitochondrial activity is kind of. It almost feels like that's sort of what you're trying to get at, maybe. And it occurs to me that in terms of coming up with a medium or a time frame that humans can relate to. Have you thought about potentially sonifying the digestive process of a person?
Oh, no, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. Like it could be a performative thing. You could have somebody sit down at a table and eat the whole dinner. Yeah, you might. I mean, it's a thought because I kind of almost feel like that's sort of maybe like you're kind of getting at these really, really sort of exquisite, discrete kinds of life forces. And the idea,
exactly.
the idea of pulling it into some sort of a framework that people can sort of relate to, it's a thought. Okay, questions. Anybody? Back there? Here, let's do you first and then Andrea. So we have a couple questions. So I'm gonna come back to Skype so that you can see us and we can see you. There you go. And you have to step around the, you're gonna have to step around the cable really quick.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
I really like your work.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you if you were familiar with kombucha tea and fermenting.
Yeah.
So would that work in this process, or is it different because it takes longer to ferment or something?
I think, I don't know what the specifics of kombucha fermentation are. The nice thing about kimchi and sauerkraut is they give you, pH is really easy to measure, and CO2, and you can measure temperature, which is in relation to how quickly the fermentation happens, so how quickly that acidity changes. So I think kombucha would work. It's just a matter of figuring out, what are the kind of the biomarkers of it, essentially. So pH might work, but I don't think there's a lot of, I don't know how much CO2 produces. And one of the challenges of this is getting affordable, easy to use sensors. I like this kind of DIY aesthetic, you might tell. So I think it just requires a little bit of research to figure out what these things are, but I assume it would work with kombucha.
Interesting. Okay. And then for the sounds that happen, like, are they just kind of like organic sounds that developed, or?
Those sounds are I'm just mapping those sounds to an easy to use tone library in Arduino. And I'm right now in the process of porting the whole technology over to a new system using Fidgets, which is an off-the-shelf prototyping electronics with Max MSP. It's a little bit more stable, and Max allows more diversity in sound than you can really do on an Arduino board.
How long did it take you to learn all of these programs?
Well, I'm still learning. I learn, like a good artist, I learn what I need to know to do my project, and then I move on to whatever other project is, so I'm constantly learning. I've worked with Arduino for a few years now, so I'm pretty comfortable with that, but hardware is always a challenge because it requires kind of a different approach. So I don't know if I have a good time frame for learning that, but I think there's so many resources on the web right now, especially for things like Arduino, that you can just dive in and kind of learn by doing. That's the way that I do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was about 6 questions. You have 6 questions? No. If you guys have 6 questions, we have like about 4 more minutes than I thought, so if you guys have 6 questions,
Hi.
that's fine.
I'm Andrea.
Andrea?
Yes, your work
Nice to meet
is so interesting. But I was wondering
Thank you.
about the bioluminescence piece. I noticed you kept saying seawater. Does it have to be seawater, or can you use purified, any other kind of water?
Yeah, so that particular algae is ocean dwelling, so you do need seawater.
So you have to.
Yeah, so what you can do is, what I did was get something called Instant Ocean. It's used for aquarium owners who have seawater tanks.
Right.
And you can mix it with filtered water,
Mm-hmm.
and that becomes, then it gives it the right, you need some micronutrients. So that's
that's
all about learning how to kind of give the algae the right environment to live in.
Oh, okay, that's not up my alley.
And I'm not aware of any freshwater dwelling algae that are bioluminescent, but there is plenty of algae that's freshwater dwelling.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
You bet.
Questions about? No.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, come on over and ask.
Hi, my name is Jade. You may have
Hi,
mentioned,
Jade.
you may have talked about this already, but how did you get interested in working in this way, melding these two
In this way?
practices together?
That's a good question. So I was doing my PhD research at Simon Fraser University, and I was in a lab called the Transforming Pain Lab, which focuses on developing technologies for people with chronic pain. And we did a lot of work with biosensors and measuring humans' experience of things like meditation, in virtual reality. And I just started getting into biosensors, but I was reading about things like Kerry Wolf's What is Posthumanism, where he argues that we need to rethink the world in terms of the embodied experience of other creatures. And so I just kind of had this idea of how can I do that? How could I think about creating these intimate experiences between humans and non-humans? And then I just decided that I wanted to work with bioluminescence. I also saw a great TED Talk by a woman by the name of Bonnie Bassler, who speaks about bacterial communication. And bacterial communication was really amazingly beautiful and interesting, and I was just kind of hooked, and that just set me down on this path of figuring out what could I do. So it was a pretty roundabout way to get there.
Ask him what kind of art you made before.
Oh, what kind of art did you make before you started
What
working
kind of
this?
art did I make before? Yeah, I was mostly making video art. I worked with dancers and choreographers to make interactive video for live performance, and then we would also shoot video and sort of redo it into more theatrical pieces, and then made a lot of loops about the kind of natural systems in urban environments. So I was kind of interested in technology and nature previously, but never in a way that kind of crystallized in this form.
Oh, great. You guys, anybody else? No? Oh, no, I've got some questions. Are you sure? None of you? No? Hey. Tyler, they all look frightened. I don't know why. Usually they're really talkative. I don't know. So I have some fast questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, I've never seen the Nomadic Plant Project, and I'm thrilled.
Really?
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
It looks like are they using it as a biosensor? Is it like that, or is it just sort of?
Yeah, as I understand it, the robot goes out and finds bodies of water that have heavy metals in them,
Brilliant.
and then it sort of sucks up that water,
Great.
and the plant and the bacteria on board filter it out. Or I think that maybe the bacteria filters out some of that, and then
Yeah.
the plant gets clean water.
Gorgeous.
And then, kind of like your work, it goes out and finds these, and it just knows where to go
Right.
look.
Brilliant. That's just great. I'm trying to. It's so interesting that floorboard project is up for a bunch of National Science Foundation grants and things, and I would love to talk my colleagues into the fact that I would rather show it as an artwork. So I'm always trying to figure out other people that are doing this work that we could maybe we could maybe go use that model so that I can put the floorboards in museums and interacting with people and out on the street and stuff like that. So I don't know.
I think he won the Ars Technica award a couple
interesting.
years ago.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, I will go look it up.
There's links.
Yeah, and the sonification, the plant sonification project is really beautiful. I don't know. Do you know about the caterpillar studies? You might be interested.
Which ones?
So
This is
there's
the one where they're crunching on leaves,
Right,
and laying
yeah.
it back to the plants.
yeah, and they're beginning to think that plants actually communicate sonically.
Oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
and really, really, really discreet noises. I mean, so much
Yeah.
so that people are doing things like not cutting vegetables in front of their potted plants.
Wow.
Yeah. So just for you, in terms of non-human interactions.
I have a plant project in mind, but that's a slightly different one. But
Amazing. Well, you go, yeah. So it's yeah. I mean, it's just extraordinary. I just did a talk on the cyborg futures of non-human life forms, and so I was talking about some of that stuff. So class, are you guys sure you don't have any other questions? Because I've got two more questions for him that you guys might not be that interested in. Nobody? Okay. I'm gonna really fast. Are you at Isaiah in Hong Kong?
I'm not going to Isaiah this
Right.
year.
Okay.
No.
What were you
My
gonna say?
colleague Carlos Castellanos is there. He's doing residency. At the last Isaiah, we did a microbial fuel cell workshop. And we made basically mud batteries.
I came to it.
Did you come to that?
Yeah, I did. I was a little on the late side, and you guys let me sit in for free, or I forget exactly what it was, but yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Oh.
'cause one of my students was doing my mud batteries a couple years ago. I was going to say one other thing. I'm also part of this thing called NMC, New Media Caucus, and I was going to pitch a symposium to CAA on art and the non-human. I founded a lab here with the computer scientists that I've been working with on the Floorboard project, and it's a platform for the use of computer vision and machine learning for art projects. It's called the DigiHuman Lab. And one of the things that they're doing with computer vision is they're showing it paintings. And it's making all these connections that nobody was aware of before from paintings. And so it's also sort of figuring out what people like to look at in terms of paintings. And so we're working on programs for computers to enjoy art, basically.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but so the art for the non-human, it's sort of like this kind of grab bag of stuff. But it occurs to me that you would be really wonderful for that. So I might talk to you in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So hey class, forgive me for going off script for just a second and asking questions. Does anybody have any other questions for our presenter? No? Should we have him come back when we do kinetic art next year? That would be really good. Everybody's going, yeah, we want you back for kinetic. You were like, so I'll have you come and Skype talk for us again. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. That was beautiful. All right.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, all right, yeah, so great. Okay, so, and I'll send you a link to our Vimeo things in case you need to use them for your purposes.
Oh, great.
Okay, all right.
Great.
Should we have a great big hand?
Yes.
You guys, a big hand. Woo! Yay! Thank you so much for coming, Rutgers. Awesome. All right. Bye.
Take care.
Oh, can you press stop on that, Amanda?
Awesome, you guys. Well, thanks for getting that in 2 parts.